Well, I hope that surprise didn't make you start a load of your pants. So, this is Space Hulk, Vengeance of the Blood Angels, and I'm playing the PS1 version. I would have gotten either the 3DO or PC versions if it weren't for the fact that I didn't have $700 back then, and the PC version are kind of hard to come by. So why not play the PS1 version since I so happen to have it anyway? Okay, so it drags on from here, so to make a long story short, there's a huge spaceship consisting of 50 Hulks that's off a warp course and it's going to land on some planet which it'll kill billions of lives, causing massive butthurt to the Space Marines, thanks to a bunch of unwarranted self-important aliens called the Gene Stealers, who basically go off being a bunch of heroes, and because no one is able to blow up the ship due to lack of resources, a group of Space Marines are sent in to fix the warp drive engines to get the ship back on course. While on board, these Gene Stealers make it their mission to kill everything in sight, and they come in hordes, so it's an epic battle for survival here. Sort of. Okay, so this is the main menu. Yeah, just go along with it. Anyway, so we can do historical or campaign. It's a very difficult decision. Oh, let's go for the campaign mode. Now, for every mission you start, you'll listen to some guy on a throne telling you what's going on. I'll let you hear what he had to say if my PS1 disc wasn't scratched. On to the game. You'll play as a random Space Marine throughout the entire campaign. You are given your objectives, and the game begins. It's play like a simple first-person shooter with strategy elements. When you start the game, you'll be taking orders for the first 5 levels, and here's a pro tip. If you see a Stealer, keep your distance and shoot it dead. Also, follow your orders until you reach the stage 6, where you now command your own squad. You can have them move around to wherever you want them to be, you can have them fire a gun at certain points, you can have them follow each other, you get the basic idea. Hell, if you wanted to, you can play through the entire game like this, but the main character you play as must be kept alive. Otherwise, without the squad leader, the game is over. Oh, and why do you need to keep your distance? Because if you don't, the Stealer will get up on your grill and suddenly go from a pixelated 32-bit sprite to an FMV sequence. Unless you know what you're doing, you might as well shake your ass in the air because you will get raped. A lot. Now, there is a way to pwn the Stealers up close and personal, and I think I mastered it. It works like a real-time action sequence without the button indications, kind of like Dragon Slayer. Here's what you do. If the Stealer looks like he's going to take his time with its attack, you mash the X button like a madman. But if it looks like it's going to pull up a fast one, push on the circle button faster than you would get on a clean hooker. Otherwise, expect to see this a lot. Oh, and the load times are pretty bad in this game. Nowadays, it'd probably be up there next to Sonic the Hedgehog for the 360 and PS3. It loads to load up a load screen, which that loads up to the actual game. Then when you die, the game loads to tell you that you've died, or if you won, the game loads to give you options. Actually, it's not that bad by today's standards, and besides, this game was made in 1995, around the time the PlayStation came out, so it's excusable to say the least. But I'm more surprised that the 3DO version practically just drives straight through load times, and that has more going on compared to the PS1 version. In fact, the interface is very different, and not to mention the FMV close combat sequence seems to have slower frame rates than the 3DO version. What happened here? Besides the port differences, my gripes with this game is the campaign is short. There's also not as much variety as it claims, well, for the campaign mode anyway, because all you have to use in combat is a bolter and your metal fist. You'll eventually have a teammate that has a flamethrower who's stupid enough to get sodomized in close combat almost every time, but can be useful. Plus, there isn't much of a variety in objectives, as it's basically going from point A to point B and sometimes getting items and placing items. Oh, watch for that landmine. Be sure to shoot those things. Anyway, and there's pretty much only 2 cutscenes in the entire game, where if you fail somewhere before the last levels, the ship crashes, causing a butthurt as said earlier, and another where it's the same thing except the ship goes off to the warp thingy. While the campaign lacked, don't worry, there are about 50 more levels you can play anytime you want in the historical room, where you can play training missions, some missions from the original Space Hulk, some classic missions, and famous missions featuring 6 different characters with their own set of maps. Unlike the original Space Hulk, where you can have the ability later on to set which squad member you want and even adjust the weaponry, every map pretty much has its own sets, which means the maps aren't going to be any different when you get back. I do give the game props for giving a reason to come back for more. Oh, and while you can fight a variety of different enemies like traders, hybrids, and these mages, I guess, for the campaign there's only about 4 instances where it gets mixed up a bit in terms of enemies, one of which doesn't have gene stealers, the only time when 1 out of 8 parts of repetitiveness is given a break. While the game is fairly simple at first, it will fuck you up if you even let it go on. Of course, that depends on the difficulty you've adjusted. On the higher difficulty, the stealers will come in hordes. Oh yes, I forgot to mention, the graphics are quite good for its time, though correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure the Terminators have different weapons shown in other versions of this game. But it's always the bolter and the fist in this port no matter what, and of course the frame rate issue for the F&B sequences I mentioned earlier. The ambient music at the intro and main menus are also good, setting the mood for the setting of what the game takes place in. Plus throw in dark narrow corridors with scary rapists, and you got a game that might give you chills when you first play it. Overall, if you're interested in a game like this, I'd say pick it up. Download it if you have to, because I am addicted to this game as it is quite fun. Now, since I don't have a proper ending, I'll end in a not so traditional montage of me ponying Steelers and a kisser. Thank you for watching, and enjoy!